Good morning, everyone. A very good morning and welcome back, participants, on the fourth day of FDP on Advanced Research Capabilities in Architecture and Planning. Yesterday, we had a very fruitful, informative, and extensive session on sampling design, statistical tool, and quantitative research method. And after that, I am anticipating that you all had a very calm night and now you all are ready to learn more. Our speaker roster is packed with dynamic individuals who will delve into various research methodology and approaches, sharing their insight and experience. Let's get started. Our first speaker of today, Dr. Shobhrojit Banerjee sir, he is with us from very first day of the webinar as a coordinator. Although he was introduced by the Zuberia in the beginning, but today I'll take the opportunity to add whatever Zuberia has mentioned in the beginning, that he is a very great mentor and guide. He used to help everyone who reaches him for the guidance, including me also. Thank you so much, sir. We welcome you to begin the session.
Thank you, Divya,
So,
for handing over the platform to me. And I think today I'll be discussing a very soft component of research methodology, which is research ethics, and a very critical component of research methodology, which is how to actually write your report and what cautions and what measures you should take while you write your report, because it is ultimately whatever researcher does during the entire period of time is actually evaluated by the examiners, uh, wherein the researcher never faces the examiner in person, or neither the guide of the researcher, the examiner comes to know who is the examiner comes to know who is the candidate and all that, but it's a single blind process. The guide also does not know. And what speaks for the research is the report. So the report has to be holistically, very carefully, and very systematically drafted in order to express the ideas, the logic, and the results, and how it is going to affect the entire domain of knowledge. And if definitely it involves the society or the mankind, how it is going to be helpful for the society and the mankind. So these are the two components. So starting with the first soft component of research ethics, I would like to request Tanima to kindly share my presentation, because that's a better way what I have seen this thing. So there are less glitches out there. So yeah, Tanima, thank you. So research ethics. Next slide, please. So basically, I will be covering into in this presentation in the introduction of what research ethics is and definition. So you see that here I have written definition of ethics in a very blurred manner. Why? The reason behind this is that this is something which is also very blurred. It is not defined. What is blurred? Something, when it is blurred, that means it can be this way or that way. So there is a limit that you have to draw, where and how you have to stick to your ethics. And preferably, all the ethical considerations that I will do are absolutely necessary for any researcher to adhere to. So then, what is human research? Generally in architecture and planning, we go for human research areas wherein we do. That is why it is known as social research also, because humans are social animals. And then we have why the ethics are important. Ethical principle guiding research. There are certain ethical principles which are stated down as norms, regulations, or mandatory points which have to be followed, failing which you cannot actually guide you cannot actually guide your entire research process. And then we have ethical principles according to a Belmont report. This is a report where this gentleman, he actually said that there are certain ethical considerations which are mandatory, for any researcher to follow, and that is also and that is now followed worldwide in most of the areas and most of the institutions, and most of the researchers do follow it. So then we also will talk about different type of participants, how they are, procedures for protecting study of participants. Like when you study 5 people, then out of all these 5 people, what you study and what you gain, what you analyze, what you conclude should be protected to certain extent, and it should not be made public. And what to what extent it can be made public, to what extent it has to be protected, and so on and so forth. And then we'll consideration about the major potential benefits of the participants who are samples of your research, or who are a part of your research, potential risk of the participants, how they are at risk, ethics include areas of different focus, so that will also be discussed. And definitely there are different researches which include different vulnerable groups. These may be socially vulnerable groups, these may be economically vulnerable groups, these may be politically vulnerable groups, these may be, even medically and medically vulnerable groups. So how you what type of treatment, I'm not saying treatment in the sense that they are going to solve their problems, but in your research, how are you going to deal with these type of vulnerable groups? So that is what we will discuss. So next slide, please. So introduction to research ethics, if you say, see, you see that all the parts I have actually aligned it to the right hand side. This may be a question to you. Why did I align something to the right, where general considerations are aligned from the left? If anyone can answer, please put up your hand. I'll wait for 2-3 seconds. Okay. So the thing is that my concept was very clear. Ethics is something which merges from the right if you start your research from the left, writing your research from the left. That means you have to keep it within two boundary limits, right? You have to keep your research in within the boundary limits of your purview, so that you don't make somebody else suffer because of your research. That is point one. And second point is, unless both the boundaries are aligned, what happens is that it is not acceptable. That means it has bumps into it. It is not acceptable by the society. So this was my basic idea, very vague, very thematic, very conceptual. So let us come to the point. You must accept the responsibility to behave ethically towards those who will be affected by your research. That is the first point. Ethics is the study of proper action of a researcher, the research and the researcher. It concerns the responsibility of the researcher to be honest, respectful to all individuals who may be affected by their studies or their reports of the studies, the outcome of the research or the research. Next, if we go by the dictionary definition of literal definition of ethics, they are the principles for guiding decision making and reconciling conflicting values. So people may disagree on ethics based on personal value system. So here comes two things. One is your principle and value system, and second is your ethics. I'll give you a small example. My principle and my value system says that after 10 p.m. I will not entertain any calls which are officially in nature. Okay. But my ethics says what? that I should take a call if there is some emergency. So there is a very blurred area where you say what is ethics and what are your principles. So your principles may are individual ways or thoughts that you have developed over a period of your time through experience, through your work, and those should be ethical in nature. I cannot have some principle which is not ethical in nature. For example, I cannot have the principle of taking money from everybody and not returning them back. Correct? So this is something which is unethical principle. So this is what generally, so that means what ethics are the values which are guided by certain laws, bylaws, guidelines, acts, and so on and so forth. So in research also, you need certain guidelines which should be followed by every researcher and should be understood by every researcher, and they should follow them in their way path of their research. They should be truthful to the work they do, truthful to the work and the society, the stakeholders they are involved in during the process. So what a person considers to be good or right may be considered bad or wrong by another person. So this is very qualitative in nature, but there are issues which are very specific also. For example, I cannot use a photograph or a diagram of someone else in my research report, directly copy it and paste it without acknowledging that person or mentioning the source of that. So this is research, this comes under research ethics. This may not come under research plagiarism. Plagiarism is a portion, is a component or is a subset of the research ethics. But what I said just now, the example that I have given right now, says that it is research ethics. Next slide, please. So, human research ethics are the basics of any research. I said you right at the beginning of the start of the presentation that this is going to be a very soft component of research methodology. Soft component means you have to understand it because there is a very thin line which demarcates a yes and a no. Okay. Next line, please. What is human research? Human research is any research which involves or which is conducted with the people at large. It may be 5, it may be 10, it may be 15, it may be 20. That depends upon your sample size. Okay. Second is research conducted about people. First is with the people, or it may be about the people, and the research dealing with their data or issues. I'm sorry, there is the typological error, not issue, it's a issue. So research conducted about people dealing with their with the people data. For example, I go to an area, I find out what is the average income of that household, of the different households of that area in a society. Okay. And that average income which I need to find out that. So what I do, I take a particular sample of number of households, I go there and I question them, what is your income level range. Okay. Some may give appropriate answers, some may not give appropriate answers. That is different, forget it. I'll discuss about that. That is something which you have to do in your data correction and data elimination process. And then once you have arrived at a data set with certain confidence level interval. Yesterday, Professor Das was explaining about confidence level interval. That means once you're confident that 95% of the data is correct and represents your actual situation on the field, so you take that data, and then what happens? You are dealing further your research with the data of the mean of that income range, or maybe any issues of their income, or maybe any issues but relating to that those particular people. of due to they belong, or since they belong to that income range. So this is human research. Okay, next slide. So different questions will arise. What type of questions will arise? Where does how is research ethics involved, and where are they involved? What should I do? What should I not do? Because there is a very thin line, I said. If you follow research ethics, then you will be able to understand that at times it may be possible, it may be, it may look to you that your entire research is not possible, because everything what you are trying to do is unethical. No, it's not that. What I'm trying to say is, what you are trying to do may not be unethical, or what you are trying to do, the data or the process how you are doing it should be ethical, should have honesty, should have integrity, and it should not affect anyone's process of livelihood. By livelihood, I do not want to say it's the profession, it's the entire process of how they live their life. Correct? It should not affect the sentiments of the people. It should not affect the thought process and the beliefs of the people. It should not affect the values of the people. So, what you are doing as a researcher, you are valuing the values of the people that you are actually researching about. Okay, next. So, why is research ethics important? That is first question. It is a reflection, because it is important, because it is a reflection of the respect who take part in your research. That respect you acknowledge, and you respect that people who are taking, who are a component of your research, who are an integral part of your research. It ensures no unreasonable, unsafe, or thoughtless demands made by the researchers. I cannot be a thought, I cannot ask a person for a thoughtless demand. I cannot demand anything from my samples which is something which is very thoughtless. I cannot tell that that means what? I have to acknowledge, and I have to justify, and I have to stick to certain levels of limitations beyond which I should not cross. I can ask them certain personal questions, but there should be limitation to that. And if I do, then whether I am actually uh, uh, making their identity public or not, that is also a question. If it is personal, I cannot. So I'll give you different examples. For example, I am doing for example, a researcher does a research of tuberculosis patients of a particular area, and how tuberculosis has been affecting the health and the mental well-being of the people. So here two things are very important. First thing is, there are certain stigmas in the society relating to tuberculosis, and there are also certain stigmas or beliefs in the society relating to mental health. If I say one very common thing, I'll tell you, all of you will agree with me. If I tell someone today in the general society, in the middle class society, if I say something, ki, why don't you consult a psychiatrist? The automatic response will be what? Pagal hu kya? Sorry, a psychiatrist is not a doctor of a mad person or an insane person. A psychiatric, a psychologist or a psychiatric deals with what? The mental health of a person. In COVID, most of you will agree, due to post COVID, many of the human society as large, a large section of the human society is suffering from different type of mental health issues. We are unable to express that. We are unable to share that even to our near and dear ones. And why? That is primarily because of that we fear that we will be misjudged by them first, and second, we fear that this misjudgment or misconceptual that they will develop about me will float across the society. Similarly, if a researcher is researching something and he goes for that particular area and asks the different people who are living there, how many of you if have been diagnosed with tuberculosis in the past? I am sure most of them will not answer unless they have that level of literacy to understand that it is nothing a myth, or that particular society is not taking that to be a stigma. So what happens? Maybe they will answer me, a certain section will answer me if I go to the proper channel, if I can give them the confidence, they will answer me now. But as a researcher, then it becomes my duty to protect their identity in the society. I hope it is clear. So it ensures that no unreasonable, unsafe, or thoughtless demands are made by the researcher. So thoughtless, now here I cannot demand that all of you go. I'll call a public meeting and there I will ask each individual and you say yes, I had this. No, that is a thoughtless demand. I cannot say. Okay, so it ensures sufficient knowledge is shared by all concerned. Now, what knowledge? Knowledge about that tuberculosis being just a disease like anything else, just a medical condition like anything else, which can be cured and 100% cured, and it doesn't relate to any stigma of the society. Knowledge of the researcher also includes that how that society takes the same in the neighborhood, I mean in the same disease as a, whether it takes it as a stigma or they are educated enough to understand. So knowledge is shared by all, and they should also know what are you trying to do. You should be very clear to them that I am trying to find out this. You should be very honest to them that I am trying to find out this. Don't tell them that I am trying to find out this, which is actually one fourth or one third or something deviated from what actually you will find out. Then you are doing something which is unethical in nature. It imposes a common standard in all above respects. Next. Next slide, please. Why is research ethics important? Because it has become a norm as an expectation of research activity. Now, in research activity, there has been certain norms which have been drafted, which are, these norms are the basic expectations from any researcher and or a group of researchers. So these norms are the research ethics. Second, it is a professional requirement for practitioners in some disciplines like psychology, human sciences, social sciences, and so on. Even medical sciences. Okay, so it's a professional requirement. And if I consider myself, I think or most of you here may be from the architecture background. So as architects, we all have certain professional requirements. What is that professional requirement? That we should be able to read a drawing. That's a professional requirement. Or we should be able to deal clients. That's a professional requirement. Or we should give emphasis to the requirements and the views of the client for whom you are designing, maybe a house or maybe any type of act. any type of building or any type of construction activity. That's a professional requirement. Similarly, this research ethics is a professional requirement. A requirement for access to participants in others like health, and so it is also a requirement. Why? Only then you can get this access. Maybe you have to go and visit a cancer institute or a jail, right? Or a correctional home, and you have to study the behavioral pattern of the inmates in the correctional home. There you have to give a declaration that you will adhere to certain ethical points which they consider are very important to make you interact with those inmates. And later on, after interaction, when you take their data and go back and publish your research or publish a paper of that research, you have to also consider their privacy, their social status, their social beliefs, everything. So these are norms, correct? So that norms, it's a requirement of to access the participants also, and it is a requirement to comply with external references to obtain funding also. So in case when you have funded research programs, for example, if you go to Department of Science and Technology, or if you go to the World Bank USAID, or if you even go to your state science and technology department, you have different researchers go through different scientific research which they undertake, right? For example, scientific research by CSIR labs, or anything which they are undertaking, which are sponsored research projects. Okay, so what they have to do, these norms are there which belong to the research ethics component, and the principal researcher and all the researchers have to sign that in a proper manner, that yes, these are the norms that we are going to follow. So this is a sort of regulations also, professional norms and regulations, the guidelines. You can say the norms, somewhere it is mandatory, you can say somewhere it is uh, advisable, and somewhere it is desirable. So the difference of desirable, advisable, and mandatory also differs. The same norm can be desirable somewhere, can be advisable somewhere, and can be mandatory somewhere, depending on what situation you are doing and what you are trying to analyze, and what is your field of research, what is your exact objective that for which you are doing your research. Next slide, please. Thank you, Vijay. Now I am getting some strength in your presence. Very good morning. We had a wonderful session with you yesterday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Please carry on.
Yeah. So, what are the ethical principles guiding research? First is respect for human dignity, respect for free and informed consent, respect for vulnerable persons, respect for privacy and confidentiality, respect for justice and inclusiveness, balancing harms and benefits, minimizing harms and maximizing benefits. So these are all which should be the outcome of your research, or your research should consider. Either your research should consider maximum benefit as an outcome, or maximum benefit as a component, integral component. Minimizing harm from the outcome or from the process as a component. So these all parameters that I have enlisted here, these are all ethical principles guiding research. Please do not deviate. If you deviate, you may be subjected to what? Litigations. You may be subjected to human rights litigations. You may be subjected to different other litigation processes. Next. So, human dignity, if I look into, there are two essential components: the selection and achievement of moral acceptable ends. What is the acceptable ends? The morally acceptable means to those ends. That means to protect multiple and interdependent interests of people, whether it may be something related to their body, psychology, cultural integrity, religion, everything. That is human dignity. That means you are giving equal importance and you are accepting the dignity of each and every individual in your research. Okay. Next is next one, please. Presumption. Next is your consent. Okay, the second point was consent. Presumption that individuals have the capacity and the right to make free and informed decisions. In research, dialogue process, rights, duties, requirements for free and informed consent by the research subject is necessary. Your research cannot proceed without consent. Number one. I go and do an household survey for my research without informing the purpose of the survey is not acceptable. Or without informing, then they have to accept, yes, I will be a participant, and then only you can proceed further. Next, consent must be maintained throughout. If you change, if you deviate, because research, you know what happens, you go in a particular way, you go in a particular direction, and then you see that something else also has to be done, or something critical information needs to be gathered. So again, you need to change your way of direction. If you change your way of direction and then again go for a revised questionnaire survey, then you will find that 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 questionnaire also, that process also has to be conveyed to the participants, that yes, I had done this, but there are certain issues I am facing and I am trying to get better results, or this type of results, or different aspects of results, and so I am deviating, and that is why these questions need to be answered to. So this consent is required. Without this consent, you cannot do that. If you do that, you are doing something unethical. Okay. And especially in your PhD guide, a PhD process, you will find that your guides issues a certificate that this research has been conducted under my guidance and it has not been submitted in any other university or any other organization for a degree or any other commercial purpose. It is the standard certificate that a guide issues. That means what happens? Your entire research ethics, the onus of your entire research ethics during your PhD period is on your guide, on your supervisor. So if you defame it, you are actually putting him into risk. Who? That person, your supervisor, who has believed you 100% and who has given full flexibility to you to work, and he probably doesn't even know what unethical processes you have conducted. So please don't do that. So you will be the primary culprit to your supervisor. Then, of course, the people you are, the stakeholders you have involved. Next, vulnerable persons. Who are the vulnerable persons? They may be vulnerable persons means somebody who is at a risk. Risk of what? That depends on your study. Number one. But generally, if we look into vulnerable persons, what do we understand is people who may be socially vulnerable, financially vulnerable, okay, or may be a component of the vulnerable groups, okay. and so on. So ethical obligations towards vulnerable persons are very important. They should be dealt with extreme care, because number one, it has diminished competence, because those vulnerable persons are those who have less competence in that particular field, and also they have less decision making process, and they're entitled to social protection, special procedures of interest. That is why they are known as vulnerables. Entitled, they have the entitlement based on grounds of human dignity, caring, solidarity, fairness to special protection, maybe against abuse, maybe against exploitation, maybe against discrimination. So these are the vulnerable. So we often say that there may be, there is a project which has come out, which not project. I mean, there's a lot of work going on from government of India for vulnerable tribes of different vulnerable tribes across the country. So what the government has done, the tribal department has done, they have given a list of maybe 53 or some n number of vulnerable tribes. Okay, so why are they vulnerable? Because they were under certain exploitations or certain abuse or certain discrimination at a particular period of time, for which their enhancement, their upliftment, their progress has been stopped. And in order, later on, it was realized that they are vulnerable. Okay, so they may be socially vulnerable. Similarly, there may be people who may be, you know financially vulnerable. For example, the have nots or the EWS section, or for example the homeless people, right? So these are vulnerable people. You must have seen a movie where, uh, this Johnny LLB, I suppose, फुटपाथ चलने के लिए है, सोने के लिए नहीं. गाड़ी ऊपर में फुटपाथ में उठा, कुचल दिया. शराब पी के गाड़ी चलाया, आदमी को कुचल दिया, बिकॉज फुटपाथ पे गरीब लोग सो रहे थे. They are the vulnerable people. If you are doing something about them, if they are your point of concern in your research, then you have to take care of them. If you want to know the truth, they may be exploited by different political parties, they may be exploited by different religious institutions, or they may be exploited by different specific groups of people, that they will only expose to you. If you need that data, they will only expose to you if they have that belief that you are there, if they are into problem. So it's a vice versa, it's a both way process. Next slide, please. Next is privacy and confidentiality. You come and ask me, sir, what is your income range? Will I tell you? I will tell you, subject to the condition that I understand that if I tell you the truth, you will keep it private and confidential. So there are two things: privacy and confidentiality. Privacy means you may ask me up to that extent which I will allow you to ask. For example, you ask me the question, sir, what is your monthly income? Okay, fine. You are within the privacy limit. How much do you spend in this? What do you do with your monthly income? How much do you spend in your this thing? How much do you go and party in a month? That is my privacy. I'll not tell. I'll draw the line, right? Or if you even tell me how, if even if you ask me how much do you save per month, I'll not tell you. Somebody may tell you. Their limit of privacy. I may be the same person to two researchers. To one I am telling, to one I am not telling. Why? Because the person to whom I have told even how much I have earned and how much I have saved in my life, if I have told that, that means I have full faith that it will kept confidential with that person only. So the level of confidentiality dictates to what extent you can penetrate into the privacy of your samples. So first is you have to understand that there are fundamentals to human dignity. Keeping that, you can penetrate into the privacy of the person. There are certain standards to protect the access, control and dissemination of personal information. पहले क्या होता था, जब पहले पहले when initially in early 2000s, when mobile was there, it just came into picture. I remember Vijay is there. When we were students, uh, I remember in a batch of 2018, we had a batch. Hardly any one of us had a mobile in the first year, because incoming call was 4 rupees 50 paisa. Correct? But what happened slowly? It percolated. That this thing, the as the demand increased, the sales increased, they the business turned from precise to bulk, so it decreased. Right now, in that period of time, people were more private. Why? Because we used to go to the college, we used to come back to our hostels, and then we were out of the system. You are in nobody's hands. But now what has happened? Technology. You need to keep your mobile always 24/7 with you. Even if your mobile bill is not paid by your institution, but still your institution uh, wants that you keep your mobile open for the entire day. Why? You are entering into my privacy. And WhatsApp, no way is a formal way of communication, but we keep all WhatsApp open because it gives the ease of communication. But what is happening with WhatsApp? What is happening with WhatsApp is all your personal information, you are connected to the web, and all your personal information, where you are going, if your location is on, where you are going, what are the things that is happening to you, everything is open. I'll tell you a small example. There is one artist in Germany, in Berlin. He has done this very recently. It came out in LinkedIn. I was just seeing it a couple of yesterday evening. So what he did was, he took a small trolley in one of the busiest streets of Berlin, and he dumped there 150 mobiles with net connection on. And he simply pulled it and walked it through the entire street. What happened, do you know? All the vehicular traffic got diverted. Why? Google showed red color in that road. So what has happened? Now, what is Google doing? That Google is catching up the signal of the mobile. I do not know what else, to what extent these things are happening. आप जैसे ही पेट्रोल पंप में कुछ सर्वे होता था क्लब महिंद्रा का, हम अपना फोन लिखते थे, 10 तो फिनेंस कंपनी से फोन आ जाता था, सर हमारा लोन ले लीजिए, हमारा क्रेडिट कार्ड ले लीजिए, हमारा ये ले लीजिए, हमारा फलाना ले लीजिए. So this is actually unethical. I have given the mobile number with the faith that my privacy and confidentiality will be kept by that particular group of company or that particular group of people. But what are they doing? They are selling that off. I am sure 100%. I mean, Out of so many people, 83 people here, at least more than 70% have been victim of phishing through mobile networks. How are they getting your data? It is by some unethical people.
I think Sir is logged out. I request him to join it again. Please kindly be with us.
Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
This is happening every day at 10:45, quarter to 11. It's
No,
I
sir, just
created
you
the.
logged out, sir. No, sir, just you logged out. The meeting was
Oh,
continuous.
I just logged out. Okay, then
Yes,
it
sir.
is my problem. Okay, so these are human dignity, access, control, dissemination of personal information. So that is how, you see, I gave you the example of petrol pumps, Club Mahindra examples. Now what happens, even if somebody asks you, if you go to fill up your tank, somebody asks for your this thing and go for a survey, you don't give your number. If you give your number at all, or a mail ID at all, you give something which you don't access. So it, because why? If you if your data is not kept in privacy and confidentiality, it affects your mental health, psychology, and integrity as a whole. So now I don't give. So my basic integrity of a researcher, to help a researcher, is not there right now, because I have suffered from that. Next slide. Harms and benefits. Balance critical to, what are the harms? Balance critical to ethics of human research. Balance is very critical. The ethical consideration, the balance of what is ethical and what is unethical, is very critical, especially in human research. Okay. Foreseeable harms should not be outweighed. If you see that something can happen, even if there is 1% chance, 2% chance, that you should not out. चलो मुझे तो नहीं हो रहा है, samples को हो रहा है. It's not the way. You should not outweigh, and you should also anticipate the harms and the benefits. If you are anticipating the benefits, you should not outweigh the harms. That is my point of concern. You have no right to outweigh the harms which you may cause because of your research to other participants. Harms and benefit analysis affects welfare and rights of subjects. So, as a researcher, when you are doing your research, when you are conducting your survey, when you are conducting your primary data collection, please always do a harm benefit survey of the stakeholders that you are involving into it, who are involving in your research with you, up to your supervisor, up to the level of your supervisor, up to the level of your institution. Remember one thing, that it is your institution who has given you the opportunity to do the research. Instead of criticizing an institution, you should be thankful, because institution did not call you. You applied to the institution. Now, if you say that my institution has these faults, like somebody was saying yesterday, that person is foolish. If you have so much of if you are really so much of specific about being in a particular system, and you find out faults in in your institution, go to a better institution. Who says you not to? If I look into all institutions in the country today, NITs, IITs, the central institutes are supposed to be the most systematic institutions. Now we have Professor Das with us. He is there with us. Every institution has its own gaps, has its own advantages, has its own disadvantages, and that is the reason why an institution is built. So you cannot do anything in your research which harms your institution in short term or long term process. You have no right to criticize your institution. If you are doing, again I am telling you, you are not fit for research. Nowhere. आपको इंडिया में भी पसंद नहीं है, आप बाहर जाओ, आपका कैपेसिटी है, बाहर चले जाओ. Who is stopping you? Again I am saying, you applied to the institution. No institution did not apply to you. And you applied only when you saw that other better institutions are not taking you. Let me be very clear. Or you have certain personal issues which will be for which this institution will be the most helpful and choiceable to you. So that means what? You have considered your comfort level first, and then you have chosen the institution. So you have chosen again. So do that. Harms and benefit analysis is absolutely necessary. Next, justice and inclusiveness. Your research may aim to give justice to a particular group of people, or to a particular thought process, or to a particular set of guidelines, or to a particular system that is running in the society. That can happen. You may do your research in order to do that, but try to understand, it is always, you are not the one to give the justice. You are one to propose the justice. Then whether the justice will be provided or not is through a particular process. If you are so much emotional about it, come to that level, be a part of the system, and then try to give justice. For example, if I take Gandhiji's approach, he saw that in Britain, Indians were not allowed in public transport. He left his world there. He came back. He became he became an integral part of the revolutionary system, and then he gave justice. That too in a united manner. So justice and inclusiveness, that is fairness and equity. But you should give in your research. You should be fair to your research, and you should give equity to your research, in the sense your research should not be biased. In your research, you cannot, if you're comparing, say, particular two groups, maybe males and females, your comparison should not have any bias. The results may be different, but your comparisons should not be biased. That means you should be giving equal emphasis to all. So this is called procedural justice, application process. And distributive justice means when your justice is distributed across all the sections that you have considered, all the stakeholders that you have considered, considering the harms and the benefits for all. You cannot harm a particular group with the outcome of your research. Suppose your research involves some comparison between the male and the females, and then your outcome of the research cannot be such that it harms a particular gender. No. Neither can your research be so that your outcome of your research be so that it gives extra benefit to a particular gender. No. That is also not allowed, beyond the ethics. If you see any harm happening to a particular this thing, you may suggest justice for that. for equity, for inclusiveness. Next. Next slide, please. So, to avoid or prevent or minimize harm is one. No unnecessary risk of harm should be taken. Participation must be essential for achieving scientifically and societally important aims that cannot be realized without the participation of human subjects. And minimizing harm requires smallest number of human subjects that will ensure valid data. If you are minimizing harm, that means you are taking the minimum samples. If any harm is involved, please go for minimum sampling. This thing, don't take extra factor of safety for selection of samples. Only then you can minimize harm, because if you know that harm is inevitable, some type of harm is inevitable to your to your participants or samples, then please do take minimum number of samples. In that way you can minimize harm. Next, what are the beneficents? The duty to benefit others, the duty to maximize net benefits. These are your integral part of your research. These are your duties as well. It is your duty to benefit others. That is why when you come for any selection interview of a PhD, what happens is, I'm sure everyone will I will Professor Das is here, Professor Chakraborty is here, so they will agree to this, that they a question is asked: what is your societal benefit of the research? What benefit is the society going to get from your research? This is to assess two main things. Number one, the benefit is on the positive side, and second, there is no harm, mass harming of any particular section of the society. So, duty to maximize net benefits, produce benefits for subject themselves or other individuals, produce benefits for society as a whole or for the advancement of knowledge. That means what? Benefits may be tangible and intangible both. So before you frame, you find the gap. When you find the research gap, anything can be a gap, but try to find out that what will be the benefit. Yesterday, Professor Das was, I'll quote his words once again. Yesterday, he was saying that with the smallest to the smallest point, you can do your research. He said, he gave you the example of a research happening with a bangle, right? Chudi. Similar way, you can also do a research with a calligraphic pen, the nib of a calligraphic pen. But then you have to define two things. One, once you do the research and try to improve that nib, what is the benefit that you are giving to the people or the users? Number one. Number two, what is your domain of knowledge that you are adding to the section? So both tangible and intangible. Maybe I am not talking about the percentage of tangibility and intangibility. I'm not talking about that. You need not assess that. But that is very common logic, that there will be some benefits to the society, and always research involves benefits. Even Professor Das and Professor Chakraborty here are there in the platform, they will agree to me that even today when we give a paper for review and for publication, there also we have a section benefit to the society. Or as a reviewer, they have been in they are reviewers also, I'm sure, and in very good journals and all these things, peer reviewed journals and other SCI journals. They always, when they review a paper, they see that what is the benefit this particular paper is giving to the society. That is something which is there unsaid. Okay, next slide, please. So a commission was held, done under a person, and these were the people who explained the principles of research ethics and set out a set of guidelines for research ethics. Next. So ethical principles according to Belmont report. So this report was known as Belmont report. It identified three major principles. Number one, respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. So these three should be ensured in any research. These three basic principles serve the foundation of the current HHS regulations and guidelines for ethical conduct of human subjects research supported by HHS. Next. Respect for human dignity, I have said earlier, the right of self determination, and the right to full disclosure. Next, what does right of self determination say? That prospective participants have the right to decide voluntarily whether to participate in a study without risking penalty or prejudicial treatment. It means that people have the right to ask questions, to refuse to give information, and to withdraw from the study at any point of time. That means your samples have this right. If they have agreed to be a sample, does not mean you can ask them anything. You can force them to participate, and you can, even if they want to withdraw at a particular point of time, you will do unethical activities or unregulated activities. Dara diya, ye kar diya, wo kar diya. This is not done. You don't have the right. So right to self determination. Next. This is the right of your participants. The right to full disclosure. The principle of human dignity encompasses people's right to make informed, voluntary decisions about study participation, which requires full disclosure. Full disclosure means that the research has to be fully described, the nature of the study, the person's right to refuse participation, the researcher's responsibility, and everything, risks and benefits. This is exclusively very important in medical research. For example, when the COVID vaccine was given, there are different trials, there are different stages of trials. So what is happening? What was happening? COVID vaccination was, the researchers were giving trials. So there was a lot of risk involved. So when a person was giving a vaccine, was accepting to give in a trial vaccine, it was necessary that he was told all the benefits and the harms. Once the trial is over, when we all have taken vaccine, that is, now it is not necessary for them to tell all this thing, but still, as caution, they have to give us the mandatory disclosure. So as a researcher, if there is any chance of any type of reaction, I'm not saying reaction in medical terms, but action ka opposite reaction. Opposite matlab, the response of an action is a reaction. So if there is any reaction, then it is mandatory. Okay, next. So the right to self-determination and the right to full disclosure are the two major elements, which means informed consent has to be discussed. Informed consent. Next. Beneficence also involves two other dimensions: the right of freedom from harm and discomfort, the right of protection from exploitation. So the right of freedom from harm and discomfort is very clear to you. The right of protection from exploitation is also very clear to you. So if they, by participating in your research process, they should not be exploited. So the protection of exploitation is your responsibility as a researcher, if there is any chance. Next. I think this is very emotional discomfort, stress. These are all very logical things you can understand. Financial discomfort. So the ethical researchers must be you must use strategies to minimize all these type of harms and discomfort, and even ones that are temporary. Not only permanent ones, not only long-term ones, but the temporary short-term ones should also be considered by the researcher. Next. Right to exploitation again. So the participants need to be assured that their participation or information that they might provide will not be used against them legally in any way, or also unofficially in any way. Both has to be ensured by the researcher. Next. For example, person describing his or her economic circumstances to a researcher should not be exposed to the risk of losing public health benefits, or a person reporting drug abuse should not fear exposure to criminal authorities. Right? Some drug abuse people is giving his details that yes, I was tapped by this person, and then that person had taken me there, and then they somebody shared and made me gave me a sample in free, and then slowly I became addicted and all that thing. So what is he disclosing? He is disclosing certain a particular chain or a racket. So now it is your responsibility that that chain or the racket or the police or the other things do not harass him once he is harassed, or once he is in a particular rehabilitation center, or even if he is not. Next. So qualitative and quantitative data, both handling both requires good research ethics from the researcher's point of view, because both can give beneficence and both can cause harm. Both qualitative data and quantitative data, although we say that qualitative data, something is good to me may be bad to you, something is bad to you may be extremely good to me, it's though it is qualitative in nature, but still it has the risks of what? Harming the samples, the harming the people of the study, the concerned people of the study. Next. Justice, fair treatment, and right to privacy. I have discussed this both. Belmont report concerns justice, which includes participation's right to fair treatment and their right to privacy. This was absolutely there. The Belmont report, the three things I have said. So justice included fair treatment and privacy. Next. Next, I think these I'll share, you can go through. The next. Privacy is also have discussed. Next. Now, who are the participants? People who are the principal focus of the research, with whom the research impacts, who gives an impact on the research. Next. Procedures for protecting study participants. Procedures can be evaluated by critiquing the ethical aspects of the study. Now, what procedure you will, as a researcher, you will adapt for protecting the fundamental principle, fundamental this thing of giving justice or protecting the rights of the participants will depend upon what type of study and what type of ethical aspects that you are considering. Okay, so that also is a very much integral part of the research ethics. Next. Risk benefit assessment, I have told you, you cannot underweight, and there is there are lines that I like: financial, physical, emotional, social, risk to benefit ratio is all that you have to calculate as a researcher. And that ratio should be within the acceptable limits. Now, who is going to decide that ratio? If you are an experienced researcher, you are going to decide that risk to benefit ratio. If you are a newcomer in the field of research, take advice from your guide or your supervisors, or even maybe your DRC, DSC, whatever committee it is there, because they are experts, and that is why they are there. Okay, next. The general guideline is that degree of risk to be taken by participants should never exceed the potential humanitarian benefits of knowledge to be gained. Risk cannot be greater at the cost of knowledge. For example, I'll tell you a very, very simple example. Potassium cyanide. What does it stay? What how it tastes? To find out the taste, you cannot risk everybody's life. It's very, very high risk, because everybody knows that anybody who tests potassium cyanide is going to die. So that knowledge has not come in the domain of entire knowledge system in our human mankind, that how potassium cyanide tastes. So that is what I am saying, that risk should be not taken. The degree of risk should be taken, not taken above. For at any cost for knowledge. No, that cannot happen. The selection of significant topic has to be the potential to improve any type of care or the patient. This is for medical purpose, especially patient care, in first step in ensuring research is ethical. Next, major potential benefits to participants. What happens is access to potentially beneficial intervention that may otherwise be unavailable to him, especially in medical research. For example, COVID vaccination. Many people got the vaccine and was what? Beneficial, otherwise it would have not been able to reach them. Next, comfort being able to discuss the situations or problems with a friendly, objective person. The problems, as a researcher, you are the person with whom they are actually discussing their situation and problem. So they have that comfort in the expectation that their problem may be solved or their issues may be solved. Increased knowledge about themselves or their conditions, especially in medical cases, either through opportunity for retrospection or self-reflection, or through direct interaction of researchers. I may adapt certain experiments or certain medical tests. The doctor, if the doctor is a researcher, he can go for certain medical tests beyond the regular scheduled medical test, and may exactly try to know what is happening in the patient's body. Okay, so these are the benefits which can happen. Next, escape from normal routine excitement, being a participant of study. Satisfaction to the information they provide may help others with similar problems or condition. Direct monetary or material gain through stipends or other initiatives. So at times it is through stipends. Some researchers get some, or some may get some. If you do a household survey and you involve a particular, group of students, they get certain monetary benefit for a small short of time, whatever it is. Okay, next. So it's the same thing coming down. Next, same thing. Loss of privacy, time, and monetary. Research ethics areas of focus: harm, informed consent, confidentiality, deception, reporting results, and plagiarism. So these are the 5 major points you have to consider. Now, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism means you simply copying others' views, others' research, others' work, without informing them, without taking permission from them, without acknowledging them, without referencing them. Okay, this is plagiarism. Next. Harm I have already mentioned before. Next. Informed consent is also there, I have said. Next. Confidentiality, I have this thing. Next. So, plagiarism, stealing someone else's idea, else words without proper citation, someone else's intellectual property. The bottom line is cite the sources properly, and minimize quotations in research reports. That is the solution, not paraphrasing. There are many ways, by you can deceive the software which catches your percentage of plagiarism. I'll tell you one way, very simple. हर वर्ड के पीछे एक कॉमा लगा दो और सारे कॉमा को वाइट कर दो. पूरा and you take my entire report and give it in plagiarism, there will be no plagiarism. Don't do that. That is not the solution. If you are doing that, you are not an ethical researcher. That's what I mean to say. Paraphrasing does not give you the answer to be an ethical researcher. It gives you the answer to be a researcher. It gives you probably a degree also, but it doesn't state that you're a ethical researcher. Okay, next. Vulnerable groups I have already mentioned earlier. Next. See, these are the specific groups you have to take care. Number one, children legally and ethically. You have to handle children if you are doing research on them. Okay, that means up to an age group of 18, 0 to 18. Okay, I'm considering infant and all those things also. Mentally or emotionally disabled people. Okay, I will not say the word disabled. I have mentioned it here, but actually I don't have the right to tell them disabled. They are specially abled. Severely ill or physically disabled people, you have to handle carefully. That means physically, specially abled people, you have to handle carefully. Terminally ill people, you have to handle carefully if they are your subject of research. And finally, institutionalized people. That means people who belong to a particular institution, be it religious, be it financial, be it social, be it whatever. These are your vulnerable groups in true sense. If these are your subjects of research, then please be careful. You are dealing with vulnerable groups and you have to take special caution in terms of your research ethics. Else, it might result you in litigations. Okay, next. So I have already said, please carry forward, Tanima. Mentally. Next. Severely ill. Next. Example also I have given. Please go through this. I'll share this. Terminally ill also I have mentioned. So these are my references. You can go through. Now, Tanima, if you can stop, I'll come to the next portion. Very, very brief and very, in a very brief and crisp manner. That is, research report writing, which is very important. I'm sure all of you must be regular readers, be it a subject oriented book in which you are doing your research, or be it a story book, be it whatever it is. Often after reading a book, you say that this book was good or this book was fair, ठीक ठाक था, बहुत पसंद आया, I liked it a lot, it was okay, I did not like it at all. So what makes you give this reaction? There are two things. One is the content of the book, and second is, apart from the content of the book, what is the second? The second is how the book is presented to you. is similar to that of a dish that is presented to you. If you go to any big restaurant, you'll find that what happens is what is given to you to eat, the quality is equally important, and the way they give it to you is equally important. उसी को मिक्स करके दिया तो तुमको खाने में अच्छा नहीं लगेगा, लेकिन सुंदर फूल पत्ती बना के गाजर से ये करके वो करके तो you like it and you'll pay triple the amount for that. Similar is your research report, because the research report is going to speak for you to your evaluators, whoever it may be it for PhD, be it for sponsored projects, be it for other research projects. It is going to, because you cannot go to everybody and go and tell, this is what I have found out, this is what I have found out. Your report is going to be in the circulation, and that is going to say that this person has found out this. So research report writing is a very integral part. First part, the research, as I said, just as when a book is readable only when it does not have bumps. A straight road is very comfortable for a road drive if there are no bumps, right? Similarly, your report should not have bumps. That means the person who is reading your report should feel at ease. It should be like a story to him, something which he should enjoy reading it. Bumpy reports always has adverse feedback. I'm telling you, nobody likes it, even if your research quality is very high. So in order to make a report very readable and non-bumpy and smooth, what is required? The presentability of the report. Now, what happens is there are certain regulations wherein it says that ordinances say the report should be in APA standard, American Psychological Standard Association, and all that format, and it should be like this, it should be like that. Fine, it's okay. But apart from that, there are certain things which you should take care, which makes the report visually and readable. The first is the language in which you have written. We all have to write it in English, we know that. I'm not saying that you have to be an expert in English. I'm not saying that you have to know Shakespearean English. No. But what you should write in English should be very much understood and legible. That means first thing is simple English language. Use of simple sentences. Complex, complicated, compound sentences are just not entertained. That's number one. Second, grammatical errors, typological errors, formatting errors should be nullified. I'm not saying minimized, nullified. Give time for that. Keep time for that. Third, referencing should be proper. Citation should be proper. Source acknowledgement should be proper. And figures, tables, maps, charts, everything should be legible. टेबल दे दिया समझने के लिए कि मैंने टेबल दिया है, अंदर 9 फ्रंट का दिया है, वो जो एग्जामिनर है उसको माइक्रोस्कोप लेके पढ़ना पड़ा. Do you think he is very happy with that? He's not. So I'll show you my PhD report, the content page, what is a standard content page, and how you should do. It's nothing. See, to be presentable, you don't have to wear extremely high branded, costly dresses, but you should be presentable. You can be presentable in very simple terms. That is what is advisable. I'll show you. Okay. Can you see my screen? Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, first I said Before this, I'll tell you, I give you another thing. This is a very basic cover page. Okay, after the bound page, this is a very basic cover page which only says what is your topic and your name. That's it. Nothing, no tam cham, no decorations. Okay, because you are doing a PhD in architecture, and this is a PhD. This is not a project. You're not trying to impress people with presentation techniques, but you are trying to impress people with your work simply presented. Next, your topic, where your affiliation belongs to, for what, your guide's acknowledgement, the logo of the institution you belong to, the department, the date, and a simple copyright thing. So this is all what should be in the cover page. After this, you may give a dedication that you are dedicating this particular thing to somebody. Okay, or you may not, which is not mandatory. After this is a certificate. This certificate will be printed in the letterhead of your guide and signed by him, duly signed by him. Okay. Next, what happens? You give a small resume of yourself. What are you in just one page, preferably? What are you and what are your highlights? Don't give a 10-page resume. Nobody has the time to read. Why is this important? Because the evaluator will assess your logic, your experiences through this, whichever you have reflected in your report. Next, acknowledge each and every person that who have given contribution to it. And institutionally, you may be also required to acknowledge few people as a mandatory disclosure. Do that. Acknowledge, and please do not forget to sign here in the hard copy, because any acknowledgement without sign is generally not acceptable. Next, you see, you just give an abstract, maybe within 500 to 800 words, 1.5 page max to max. It may be 1.5 or 1.25 pages, and then simple keywords. Can you see my cursor here? Simple keywords. What are the keywords of your research? Finished. Now come to the table of contents. Your hello, am I audible? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
So table of content here is very clear. So the table of contents you write, then you write a number which reflects this, then you write the title, and then you give the page number. See, everything should be properly aligned. The page number should be properly aligned. This should be, the left hand side should be properly aligned. Now, before you start the chapterization, you see there are certain things: certificate, resume, acknowledgement, abstract, content, list of tables, list of figures, list of abbreviations. These are mandatory things, and their page numbers will be numbered in Roman. Okay, and then from chapter 1 you have different subparts. So first part I have given introduction. So in the introduction I have given a preamble. Then next part is 1.2, need of the study. Then third is the domain of the study. Then fourth, 1.4 is the intensity of the problem that it's facing. Why am I going to solve this? What is the intensity? Actually, is the problem worth to be solved? Fifth, what is the scope of my study? Sixth, what is my methodology of study? And seventh, what is the structure of my thesis? And I name them. You see, preferably in 2 pages I have covered that. Okay. Similarly, literature review. See, I have given all the components of literature review slowly. So my area was related to community participation in planning process. So first is community participation. What is it? Then how is it in planning process? And what are the levels? What are the objectives? What are the other things? And then slowly I come to case studies. So in case studies, it is 2.8. So 2.8.1 is case study 1. 2.8.2 is case study 2. 2.8.3 is case study 3. So now, suppose in case study 1, 2.8.1, I have given one particular table. Wait, for just a minute. I'll show you. This was the prelim draft. So, but still it is there. See, this is stage 2.3, right? So this figure is 2.1. Wait. 2.8, yes. 2.8 is my case study. 2.8.1 is my first case study. I think there is no table here. Okay, I'll show you with another example in the analysis part. See, for example, here survey 4.7.3 is survey location 3. Okay, in that survey location 3, I have developed 1, 2, 3, 4, so many pie charts. Okay, so what is this? How do I name this pie chart? Figure 4.7.3, 4.7.3, and this is the first figure, so 0.1 in italics. And then I am describing what it shows. Okay, same next chart I go 4.7.3.2, then I see what it shows. So this is how you have to name your charts, your tables, your something. You can do it at the overall level, like figure 2.1. I said it is if you think that figure, like here figure 2.1 I showed you, right? If you think that this figure is applicable for all 2.1, 2.2, more than one, then you just name it as 2.1, figure 2.1. That's it. You don't have to give a subpart of it. But if something is only for that subpart, you have to give that subpart. Okay. So this is how you go about. Then this is your basic research design. That means you are now constructing a house, as Professor Chakraborty in Rani Chakraborty had said, that this is the footprint. This is the proposed design of your research. With this, your entire research is dictated. How logically you have formulated one to the other, to the other. Now here you see there is one part which is known as the questionnaire formulation. If you go to that questionnaire formulation, chapter 3, I'll come to chapter 3. I wanted to show you all this, because these are things which generally students, they skip. See, questionnaire formulation. Question 1 and 2, these two questions specify the household surveys, specifies the respondent identity. Question 5 to 14 are designed to capture demographic data related to this. Question 15 is, that means what? Every question that you have given in the questionnaire is linking to a particular parameter or a particular reason or a particular intent that you want to capture. This is very important. This thing is very important. Question 23 analyzes two variables. First, level of participation along with the user authority. Question 24 analyzes the perception of stakeholders regarding positive effects of participation in formulation of policies. Question 26 has been framed to identify the type of awareness programs held in the locality, to identify the variable related to awareness of the citizens regarding involvement in planning stages. So every question, right from 1 to 31 I had in my questionnaire, has been elaborated here. why I have put that question, and what is the outcome of that question, and how am I using that outcome to my analysis. Okay, and then I go for a pilot survey. I simply say that this is a pilot survey I have done, and I show that this is 95. This adheres to this 95% confidence interval with the t-test and this amount of degree of freedom, and then I say that what are the inferences, and then I go for the question. Is this clear? So this was the basic thing that you have to come. Next, then you go for the survey, you go for all things, then you come for the analysis and interpretation. First is analysis of the survey data, methods of procedure of analysis. This you have to mention. What are your methods and procedures for analysis? And then what are your interpretations? So whether you do a data significance test, whether you do a one-way ANOVA, whether you do a data reduction factor analysis, whatever you do, why you are doing it, that has to be and how you are done it. And then recommendations, implications of survey findings. So one is your survey finding and another is your statistical data interpretation, general considerations for selection of participatory tools, implementation of methodology, way forward in literature, and your future scope of research. Then you have references and annexures which are not numbered. Then in annexure, you see the questionnaire for organizations, statistical tables, all which I have derived, I have given. Then you have an enormous list of all this list of tables. Table 1.1 showing this, table 2.1 showing this, table 2, 5.1, 5.2, 5.6, 5.8, so on and so forth. And you get up to this. This is a list of tables. I had around 77 tables to support my research. And then you have a list of figures, figure 2.1, figure 2.2, figure 4.1, figure 4.7.1, figure 4.7.1.2, 1.3. So these are subparts. So everything, and that should be numbered, because at the end, what you will find, and then again, you will have a list of abbreviations. What do you mean? Very common abbreviations and your area specific abbreviations. Everything should be mentioned here. So this goes to the basic contents of the report. And then your referencing, of course. You don't give all references, the selected references which are there, which are relating to your report and your research, very much related to this. So this is all I wanted to share from you, and this is the brief structure of the report writing that it should. So if you have seen the entire thing, you will find that it is written in a very simple language, in the very simple way, and very simple language, but very readable. There are no bumps. The person who is assessing my report very easily can detect any line, any reference, or anything. And even when he asks the questions, I can reply him in that way. This question compliance is given in such and such line, in such and such paragraph, in such and such figure, in such and such table, in such and such page number, with such and such reference number. Okay, so this is how it should be. So with all this, I think I have come to the end of my presentation, and I am now open for questions.
I think one hand is raised by Shreya. Yes, Shreya, what you want to ask, please ask. Or you can type in the chat box.
I will ask, ma'am. A very warm good morning to sir and ma'am.
Thank you.
Sir,
Good morning.
sir, it was great insights from your report. Sir, every university has different formats for PhD. For example, whatever we give, the final presentation for the PhD, everyone has different formats. For Lucknow, for AKTU has different, for someone has different. So my first question is talking about the thing you have presented. like you have mentioned that professional level, we should mention our academic background. So in some university, it is not mentioned that you have to mention your academic background. My first question. Second is it important to, people do not say that you should have so many questions. You have included around 21 or 23 questions. So guide always say that it should only include 4 or 5 questions. That's it. Thank you.
No, this I could not get your last question. 4 or 5 question in the questionnaire, survey questionnaire. 4 or 5 questions in where? Where 4 or 5 questions? That I could not get, but I'll answer to your first and the second question. That is, first thing, all universities, yes, they have different formats, but they don't have different contents. I am talking about the content. I'm talking about, what I'm saying is your content should be comprehensive. And secondly, the resume that I've given may not be, there's something which are mandatory contents and something which are, they're not mandatory, but they are uh, preferential. So that resume that I have given in my content basically speaks that I have whatever I have, uh, you know, experienced by virtue of my education qualification, by virtue of my work profile, that has somewhere or the other reflected, and how it has reflected in coming or deriving the research question and identification of the gap. So that was important for me, and I think it is important for everybody to introduce yourself to your external examiner. So your format, your university ordinances format may not tell you to give a one-page resume, but I would always say that you give it, even if you cannot give it right at the beginning, you should give it at your annexure. Okay. And regarding the final question, I could not get, Shreya, what are you talking about? But generally, what happens in a questionnaire survey, it is always preferable to go for questions not more than 30 to 35, because it should be a one A3 says page questionnaire. I mean, if you fold it into two A4, 1, 2, 3, 4 pages are there. The two, that should be one questionnaire. Yes.
Sir, can you describe pilot study in just one,
Pilot
two
study
sentence?
is
What is it?
what do you mean by a pilot study? Pilot study means, suppose you have 3 study areas, or you want to establish that something is going to happen, but you do not know how it can happen. So before you go for your entire survey and spend a lot of time and effort and money into it, what you do, you take a small portion as your pilot case, and then you take it simply that, yes, that okay, chalo यहाँ पे एक टेस्ट करके देखते हैं. It's a test study to see that things will work out in the way you have anticipated. Next.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope all the queries have been solved. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your
Thank you so
expertise,
much.
for sharing your
Thank you so
insight
much.
and expertise on the report writing, sir. Usually, what happens as a research scholar, we only focuses on the understanding of research process so much that usually this part we skip and don't understand. But actually, it is as important as other part of research methodology.
Yes,
Understanding
it is
of this
equally important.
understanding of
I,
research ethics helps us in each step of research, like formulating, as you said, formulating a research questionnaire till the submitting your report, and it actually
yeah, and
helps. Yes,
it keeps the researcher away from any type of litigations.
litigation, yes, future litigation, and as a research scholar, we are not able to envisage ki what kind of litigation we might face. So these are ethics or knowledge of ethics will help us as a research scholar. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and
Thank you.
effort for sharing your knowledge.
My pleasure.
Uh,
Thank you.
thank you, sir. So
I think
yes, sir.
I think we have the next session after a break.
After break, yes. At 12 noon again, sir, on research paper writing and publication. So participant, please remain signed in this session. Don't log out. And as a reputer, I have a duty to tell you that 100% attendance is mandatory and 60% minimum marks is required for the getting the e-certificate. Thank you so much. We'll join you again in 12 o'clock noon again. Thank you.